Welcome back, everybody. I know it's a couple minutes before 12, but we're going to get started here. I am so thankful that you're all here. Again, announcing our grand opening and virtual open house today of our new facility that's going to be on 3326 East Main Street, right behind Taco Bell. We are going to provide physical therapy for this side of town. We're very excited. So if you are watching and you can share the video to just get the announcement out that we're coming, we were hoping to get going on Monday. That is not going to be the case because some of our equipment is stuck in Houston, Texas. And I've been telling you that. We have some sponsors for today's open house. I'm going to list them really quick. And if you haven't gotten involved in our contest, make sure that you get signed up. And that'll be great. So here's some of our sponsors: Sunshine Cafe, O'Reilly's Auto Parts, Mattress Firm, Sherwin-Williams, American Rental, Nature's Nook, Bob Evans, O'Charlie's, BW3's, 40 Bowl, Johnson Chiropractic, Studebaker Buick, Lux Lizzie's, Olive Garden, Chili's, Jimmy John's, Texas Roadhouse, Journey Yoga Studios, Therapeutic Solutions, and El Rodeo Restaurant. So we're going to list those every hour. So if you know someone who works for them, please tag them in this. That would be super. Our next hour or half an hour or so is going to be spent with my dear friend Ashley Sieb, who's going to join us here in just a second and tell us how her and I know each other and just some things about mental health and how we get rid of the dumpster fire that occurred in 2020 and going forward. And Ashley's going to share some personal things, and she's very open and honest. So let's get and bring Ashley on board into our stream here. And there she is.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you today?
Oh gosh, I'm having so much fun. I might have missed my calling a little bit.
You are back to back. Like, I hope you have some water or coffee, like, ready to roll.
I'm very fortunate. My wife would not want me to show you that I actually had a sweet tea from McDonald's, which means I'm going to have to run more on the treadmill tonight than I actually wanted to, but that's okay.
That's great. So,
hey, we just got started. Here's your first comment.
Oh, hi, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I think everybody knows Liz. She's like one of those people everybody knows, and I'm sure you know this lady here. So
she looks pretty familiar to me.
Yeah, she might Grandma. Be someone in your life. So that's it's nothing better than Grandma following you. So
yeah.
I'm so glad you're here, and so glad that you chose to participate with us today. You were one of the first people I thought about when we did this. Why don't we talk a little bit about yourself, your family, just your connection to the Richmond area, where you're from, and let's start from there.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm a Richmond relocate as of 5 years ago, I want to say. So my husband, Justin Sieb, grew up here. His family owns Esmond Shoes, who Grandma Sieb in the comments. I'm saying a lot of S words for just getting Invisalign put in, and it's pretty tricky to talk about myself and the Sieb family with these in here.
Well, we won't say it anymore after just this intro, so I understand.
Cooper made fun of me because I was talking about sand, tiger, sharks, and the sea, and he was crying, laughing. He was like mocking me. I was like, this is so funny. But anyway, my background here in the you're yelling in the background. My background here in the community really started when I moved here and I didn't have a job. So we moved from Fishers, and my job at the time wanted me to commute a couple days a week to Indy, and I just couldn't commit to that having a 2-year-old. So you can imagine that would be hard to do. And so I kind of entered the community knowing no one. I remember vividly entering the house and just feeling immense, overwhelmed feeling of like isolation, which we're going to talk about a little bit deeper, is kind of a feeling that I'm sure people felt last year. Just remember like sliding down this wall and like crying in my living room thinking I just blew up my life. Like, I don't know anyone here. I don't have a job. Of course I knew Justin's family, but that was really the extent of who I knew. And so I really threw myself into the community. I started teaching classes at the Innovation Center about social media, which I actually think that's how you and I met. I don't know. Maybe it's through church. It could have been through church.
Well, I think it was one of those things where I think we met really at Richmond social media. But I'm like, hey, I think she goes to church with us. Like, I think that's how that happened.
Yeah, we probably like saw each other at the Bagel Deli or something around town. lots of mutual places and connections. And so from there, I just started supporting small business owners with their social media marketing and branding strategy. And then that evolved to actually taking on some projects around here. And so if you've recognized me, it's probably because I've been involved in one way or another with some brands that you named on the call earlier and companies that I just really love and support in the community.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Richmond social media, I think, was something that you took with this like wee little idea and really exploded into this small business get together Friday once a month. Whose brainchild was that? Was that yours?
That was before my time. So actually, I think Phil Quinn, who you interviewed earlier, I think Jeremy Keene was involved. I know that Mandy Ford, I believe, was involved. She did some graphic design. Peggy Sonova. Those are some kind of the OG names that I remember being involved. And whenever, I had moved back and I started working at the Innovation Center, they said, we need to bring more people together. We need to have conversation. We need to have community so people feel less alone in what they're doing. And so Laura Lee Heights, who I also love, I met her at the Innovation Center, and then we just started teaching classes together. And it really blossomed into a community that started with 5, maybe 3 people in my first class. And then Laura Lee and I grew it to about 77 people at one point as our biggest class we ever had.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. I was probably in that class. And I am grateful to a lot of the things you guys taught. I mean, that's where I kind of really learned. I was like, social media, why am I doing this? And and I knew that's value and its importance. And obviously, look at where we're at today. I'm conducting the interview, which is just crazy to me. But so did that community help you kind of not feel isolated then again and grow out of that and meet more people in the community?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I'm a natural extrovert, so that process is easy for me to meet people and talk to people when they're there. I have a lot of empathy for people who are introverts and they struggle with throwing themselves out there or like being in the middle of a room and wanting to talk to people. I have a lot of empathy for that because I know being in my situation, which I'm sure some people watching can relate to that idea of feeling isolated or walking into a room and not knowing anyone, but then also innately as a person not wanting to be that person in the middle of the room. So there is a lot of layers to it. So for me, it tremendously helped. And I think that building those relationships led to another relationship. So I might have had coffee with someone and maybe I, I wasn't the right fit for marketing work for them, but then they said, I could introduce you to this person. So I do think whether you're introvert or extrovert, knowing how to connect and communicate with people, especially in a virtual world like we're doing here today, is really important because that is kind of your bridge out of isolation, is having the vulnerability to share how you're feeling openly and then asking somebody, where should I go? Should we go together? Do you know someone who could help me?
Yeah, that's great. So today we wanted to talk a little bit about mental health and what was the complete dumpster fire of 2020, because I think a lot of people struggle. And I see that as a clinician and with patients on a regular basis. So, you shared with me some struggles that your family had last year. And maybe if you open up a little bit about that so we can get started on our discussion of mental health and what do we do for strategies. And if anybody has a comment, you need to put it in the comments below, okay, so I can flash them up on the screen. So if you have a question for Ashley, she's pretty knowledgeable. Now, with a little hyphen or a little asterisk that says, neither of us are mental health professionals, but I think both of us being extroverts are just able to talk about it, and I think that is helpful for some people. So why don't you get into what was 2020 and how you and your husband kind of survived all that mess?
Yeah, so I actively go to therapy. I started therapy in 2018, and it was right after I had a full-blown panic attack with everything that I kind of talk about mental health as a backpack. So we have these things that happen to us in our life and we put them in our backpack and we just try to keep going, right? So whether that's trauma or grief or something significant, loss related that we had, painful memories of being made fun of or bullied, we just tend to put that in our backpack and we just keep going. Hi, Lindsay. Lindsay and I talk about the backpack analogy all the time.
That's
So
awesome.
we've got this huge backpack and it's just weighing us down, right? And so what I want to start by opening with is the pandemic really exasperated anything that already exists. So anything that was within someone's backpack that was already heavy for them was now 10 times heavier. So when you look at the data around the number of people who were affected by anxiety and depression in 2019 versus 2020, it was a 30% increase in adults. So about 11% of people in January 2019 said that they had some elements of depression or anxiety in their life. When you look at that data, as of January 2021, 41% of people are saying that they've experienced some level of depression or anxiety as an adult in the United States. So that means at least 40% of the people on this call can relate 100% deeply to what I'm saying, for sure.
So that's 120 million people approximately in the United States. I'm one of the 60% that does not have, and well, at least I don't think I do. Maybe I do and I don't know about it, but I don't have that anxiety. I don't have the depressed like feelings. For someone like me, I just go, why don't you just get over it?
Yeah.
And I've kind of stepped back as I've learned more over the last 20 years, obviously. But what kind of things do people like? I'm the 60%.
Yeah.
How can we help the people who have the 40%? That's where I'm at.
It's a big question. And your other question earlier was around like what happened in 2020 that also made it worse for you and your family.
I'm sorry, we didn't get to finish that.
No, you're good. I think they all parallel together really well, which is, in 2020, I was already dealing with a lot of things that I was in therapy for. I had just mentioned I've been in therapy since 2018. So I'm still active in the work. I'm still doing the work. I'm still processing all of these feelings and emotions and past experiences. Now, 2020 brought in new levels of illness, of isolation, of loneliness, of OCD. People who have OCD, now that's 10 times worse for them, what they have to deal with controlling. The germs, the people who had substance abuse issues, the people who struggled with suicide ideation, job loss. I just rattled off 8 different areas that influence mental health. And for me, the 2 that I could speak pretty openly about are, my husband lost his job in the pandemic. And as the primary breadwinner for our family, the person who brought in like 90% of our income, so I could just go off and teach and write in coffee shops and speak wherever I wanted to. I mean, he really, was the core for our family's finances. And when he lost his job, it was devastating. It was devastating financially, and it was devastating emotionally. When you are fired and you're caught off guard by that, the emotional impact of that is significant, right?
It was devastating for both of you.
Mm-hmm. It was devastating because, then I had to pivot my path and I had to get a full-time 9-to-5 corporate job. And I went like all in on trying to be the breadwinner. He's trying to find his job. There's now that tension and division in our relationship that wasn't there before. I mean, again, every relationship has tension and division, but now it's just exasperated. So I had been going to therapy quite often. Justin started going, and he, oh my gosh, just the impact that he was able to have and talk through some things is massive. It's beautiful. There's no shame in therapy. There's no reason why someone should feel bad about going to therapy. I think we spend a lot of time labeling mental health as like, when we were younger, Jason, I don't know about you, but when I heard mental health, when I was like 8 years old, I imagined somebody in a straitjacket in a mental home. There was no other explanation in my mind than that. That's what I thought it was. And now as in a society, we've got a lot more work to do, but as we've broken down some barriers and talked more openly, I can see now that mental health comes in many facets. Like I just named off those 8 areas. And for me, I have been in recovery for an eating disorder. I had an active eating disorder for 5 years when I was a teenager, and it stopped in college and I went into remission. But in April of this year, when my entire life blew up, I found myself right next to that toilet again and made myself sick after eating so much because I was fueling all of these emotions and I just like ate so much. And then I relapsed in that moment to just make myself sick. And the amount of shame that I felt for being in recovery for so long and making myself sick again and knowing that that's what I did, I didn't even tell my therapist about it when it happened. That's how much shame I felt for that.
A lot of people feel that though, don't they? I mean, they feel
Yeah.
it's this process that we go through, right? It's not, well, I'm done, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that, is it?
No, it's every day. Every day I'm in recovery. Every day I'm in active recovery. Every day I have to make intentional efforts to be present for caring for myself and those around me. And I led with caring for myself because so many of us think we have to care for other people first, that we burn ourselves out and spread ourselves so thin that we can't care for other people because we have nothing left in that cup of love to give. And so when I think about those different components around mental health and the stigmas around it, I weave into probably every conversation that I'm in therapy. You can ask Roxy. I see her comment on the screen. I just did a social media workshop today. I was like, so in therapy, I learned the importance of boundaries. And I think that's really important because, I want people to feel like, I know, at least through Ashley, like when they're watching this video, I want them to feel like there is no experience in this world that we cannot connect with as humans because humans have shared experiences. And emotions innately are shared emotions. So that means that, Jason, you have the power to feel emotions that I have because we're both human. Not one of us is more human than the other. So when we lean into that, and you said, how can I support you, Ashley, when I have no idea what you're going through? You know what I want you to do? You want to know the honest to God answer? What I want you to do, Jason, is I want you to say, Ashley, I have no clue what you're going through. And I have no idea what to say to you, but I love you and I'm rooting for you. And I'm going to keep checking in on you. That's it.
That's pretty easy.
That's all I want you to say. Because then you've built a safe place for me to come because you said, I love you. I'm rooting for you. I don't understand. That proved that you had empathy for me. I don't know what that's like. Empathy doesn't mean that you take on what I feel. It just means you acknowledge that piece of the feeling, right?
Sure.
And so then you can check in on me in 5 days later. I mean, when I posted about my eating disorder relapse a month or two ago and how I'd been struggling and how Justin actually hid the scale in our house, like I didn't know where it was for like 3 months. Justin was protecting me from me. When I posted about that, one of my best guy friends, who's not very emotional, he's very much like you, Jason, where he's like, doesn't really connect to that piece of it. He sent me a message and was like, hey, I saw your post today. I just want you to know that I'm here for you anytime you want to talk about this. That's it.
Awesome. Going back to what you struggled with, there was a period in your life where you lost like 100 pounds, right?
Yeah, for sure. And, that was probably, so when I had Cooper, right after I had Cooper, I was almost 300 pounds. And so when I went on my weight loss journey, I did it the right way. I did it over 3 years. It took me like 3 years to lose the 100 pounds. And so that does, though, add a layer of complexity and the issue that I struggle with mentally. It's so much awareness around was my eating disorder really about food? No, it was not about food. It was about control. It was about trauma. It was about shame. It was about guilt. It was about people calling me fat when I was younger. And I had like a kid, when I jumped off the diving board at the city pool, said I was going to let all the water out when I jumped into the pool. Like I am like telling you that story and I feel 7 years old on the inside. I remember what that felt like to be so bullied. So when we see these people struggling, whether it be with OCD, whether it be with a substance abuse, whether it be with depression, it's not up to us to label that for them. It's not for us to kind of self-identify and label label me as depressed, label me as an eating disorder. No, I'm Ashley first, and I have a feeling, or I have an experience that is a part of me. So I think a lot of our problem is we think if I raise my hand and I say I'm going to therapy, or I have this condition, I think we think that we're just identifying ourselves by that and that alone. And it's not true. It's just a part of me. It's just a part of what makes me me. You okay? Cooper said, I heard the whole thing. He's like emotional just listening to me.
Well, I love him. When we're all working from home and doing those kind of things, we know that the 7-year-old is probably standing right there, and you just can't see it. Something that we talked about earlier, I think is really important for us to talk about in my setting here, is that as a clinician, I treat lots of different things. I treat all different spectrums and races and people who have different backgrounds. And obviously, I always joke with my patients. I said, look, I came from apple pie. Like, my background is apple pie. My parents were married for 53 years. It just like, it just, I don't have any of those traumas that a lot of people have. So with that being said, we talked about what happens if someone has a trauma in their life, and I'm trying to treat them for actually a physical ailment, how that can affect their outcome in the end.
Yeah, that's massive. And I think it's beautiful awareness for you to know that, because there is a book, and I'm going to completely get it wrong. Hi, Derek. You're the best. Second presentation that Derek's been on with me today. Same with Roxy. Trauma lives in the body. Grief, sadness, all of this lives in the body. And you mentioned earlier in your introduction of your sponsors, Journey Yoga Studio, Kendra, you talk to her, she can talk about like certain areas of your body where stress goes. Like, if you have some areas of stress in your low back and you feel that in your low back, it's because your kidneys are working overtime to get that toxic, cortisol out of your body, right? So when we have these experiences, that lives in our body, and we've got to understand that. Understanding how to treat that is important, because what I may deal with as somebody who has carried trauma, maybe.
There's going to be some trauma here in a second, right?
Oh, he's like, Mom, why did people bully you? Like, he's so concerned. I have the most empathetic child in the world. I love you. I'll tell you in a little bit, okay? So, it's one of those things where we have to acknowledge that what we've been through is stored in our body. And so when we can work through that, and we can acknowledge that, and we can openly go to our providers. Jason, I remember the first time I ever marked on that box in the doctor's office, the yellow sheet with like all those checked boxes. It's like, do you struggle with this? And every other time I was like, I am not saying that I struggle with anxiety and depression to anybody. Like, I was just like, years and years and years, I was like, I'll just skim right over that box. And the first time I ever made the conscious decision to speak up and raise my hand and say was like 2017. And I checked that box. Like, I struggle with this. This is something that is a part of my healthcare journey. And then I was able to start getting the health I needed, because I was able to own that piece of the story. And then you, as a provider, if I check that box, you can say, hey, Ashley, I noticed you checked anxiety. Can you tell me a little about, how are you feeling right now? Lean into the right now. How are you feeling today? Thanks for showing up. Right now, you showed up. All right. Then you break the ice with me. And then you say, whenever you're ready, I'd love to unpack that a little bit with you and understand how my treatment can better support what you've been through. Starts with small steps,
Sure. Yeah, I think that'd be great to unpack that a little bit. And then, because we know, I think as clinicians, just say, hey, I recognize that some of these things will impact how our outcome is going to be. And I just want to be able to be supportive of you the best I can to help you fix what we've got, what you're here for.
Yeah.
But some of that stuff might have to do with that. With leading into that, if someone, who do you talk to? I mean, if you're like, I'm having a problem, I'm struggling. I mean, where do you start? Like, that's a world where I say, do you call up your therapist and say, I just pick one up randomly out of I would say the phone book that shows how old I am, but out of the phone book, or you say you start with your family doctor or things like that. Can you help me out with that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's beautiful insight for people who say, I need help. Because number one, you have to start with yourself. If you want to know the honest answer of where to start, it's with you. Because if you don't acknowledge that you need help and that you're open to the idea of help, then it doesn't matter what I say next, because you're not going to listen because you think it doesn't apply to you. When you're ready and you're in that headspace and you acknowledge that you are open to getting support, to talk through how you're feeling, to get the support that you need, whether it be through cognitive therapy, which is what I'm in, or medicine. I took medicine for 9 months to try to get my chemicals back in line. Whatever that looks like for you, you have to be ready to do the work. Because my therapist, the first thing that she said to me when I called her, and I'll get to that, how I found her in a minute, she was like, if you are showing up and you think that, I'm just going to sit back and listen and you're going to kind of lay on the couch and talk to me.
And that's what it looks like in my mind.
I know. That's why I'm telling
Yeah.
you that I know people have that perception. I know people think like therapy is just like you go lay on the couch and you just look at the sky and you cross your arms. And I mean, my therapy does not look anything like that. My therapy is like her calling me out, her telling me, whoa, let's go back. No. That's not right. She'll say things like, who told you that? When I'm telling her a story, she'll say, who told you that? And I go, oh, I guess I told myself that. And she's like, exactly. Right. So she's there to be strong accountability. And that's what I need. Like, that's what I need is somebody who's going to be strong, accountable, actionable. She gives me homework at the end of our sessions. So it's not just me like laying down, looking at the ceiling, talking about my bad day that I had yesterday. It's like real work. And that's why I say, if you're not ready to be open and honest and dive into those pieces, I encourage you to do more research. I encourage you to read online, what are some local therapists in your area? Google therapists near me, or therapists to help with trauma, therapists to help with grief. Get specific on the area that you want to talk about and start there. Do your research. Ask people if they've been. Ask me. I'll tell you right now, Mike, go to Nicole Burgess in Indianapolis and I love her to pieces, right? Like, people will tell you pretty openly, what is it that you're trying to get out of therapy and where can you go? That's just one angle. But you could also talk to your healthcare provider, see if there's medication that would make your hormones, your chemicals be better balanced. You do a questionnaire whenever you go to your primary care doctor and you answer the questions, and they get you, there's like a score, and depending on your score, they know what level should they have this intervention with you. There are systems in place to support you, and they're not rooted in making you feel shame or fear. They're rooted in understanding where you're at in your journey, and then that leads into you doing the work.
So it might be I don't want to say pick a therapist. That's not the word I'm looking for, but you need to find the right fit, right? And I mean, you could go to a therapist and you could both agree that this is not going to it's not going to work out real great. And you try somebody else.
That's okay.
Right?
That's okay. My therapist will tell me, so here's the other thing I want to give unsolicited advice on is my biggest fear with going to therapy was that first conversation, because I didn't know where to start. I was like, I literally don't know. Should I start with how I felt in my childhood? Should I start with my eating disorder? Should I start with my panic attack? Should I start where? I don't know where to start. So that fear of not knowing where to start meant I did nothing, which I know a lot of people relate to that feeling. So instead, I just said, I'm going to go into it. I don't know what to expect. And I'm just going to be open to where she guides the conversation, because remember, she's the professional. She's trained to do this work. He or she, in my case, I see a woman. The doctor's trained in that work. So if you don't, as the patient, feel like there's that strong alignment, or you feel like you did your intake and your discovery, then you have to say, do I need to get a second opinion? Do I need to talk to somebody else? Do I need to ask someone else about who they're seeing from their therapy practice? There are places like your potentially where you work that will cover mental health for you. So just recently in 2021, my work started covering a wellness program that would offer employees access to mental health experts. So if you don't know where to start with your job, start with your place of employment and see where they could direct you to.
Sure. We call that paralysis of the analysis.
Yeah.
You think and think and think and think and think and never do anything. So let's get to some comments here. Here's a comment by Roxy, who we both know. My ENT has been so impactful because it does a holistic approach. He knows I'm struggling if I break my clean eating plan and get sick. And she's really documented kind of her struggles with some of those things as well. So
Yeah.
that's just great to hear. Here's obviously this person's related to me. So many. So Jolie, just to give you some background, Jolie's an RA at Indiana State University and has been for 2 years. So many students are having a difficult time finding available and affordable mental health professionals. What suggestions do you have? And I know there's mental health professionals on campus, but they're overwhelmed.
Oh, they're at capacity. And one of the problems that my students had, maybe similar to what she's experiencing, is like when it comes to your mental health, it's just like your physical health. So if I have a broken bone, you can see it and you get me into the ER. If I'm broken on the inside, it's just as significant. I can't wait a month just because you don't see the broken arm. Like when I need the mental health support, I need it now. It's not like, all right, Ashley, I'll get you in 4 weeks. So I have a lot of empathy for that experience for these universities and schools who are overwhelmed and cannot keep up with the pace. Again, this is where the caveat is I am not a mental health expert in the capacity of like a licensed professional. I do firmly believe in the power of research and asking people about their own journeys and who you could be connected to. There are options where you could do telehealth, mental health options with a virtual therapist. I actually have a friend who does that. Like as her job, she is a telehealth therapist. So there are options where if you can't get in right away, you can call hotlines. There are hotlines for a lot, like especially the one that most obvious is the suicide hotline. If it's that significant, you need to call the hotline. You need to look into the eating disorder hotlines that they have. Call in there if you're really struggling. If that's like the broken bone moment for you and that's all you can get, I think you need to start there. And then you can start to say, well, now that I've had that, how can I ease into a different plan or path for me?
Well, I wonder about, and when, Jolie, we talked about this, her and I at one point, because a lot of people were struggling. Well, what about just peer-to-peer support, at least for a starting point? Is that something in this field that is worthwhile doing, just to say, let's just share some experiences. Maybe we can help each other.
Yeah, shared experiences is really powerful. So that Me Too movement, that is called Me Too for a reason, because usually when someone experiences pain, trauma, grief, loss, assault, the first words out of their mouth when someone opens up to them is Me Too. Like when someone opened up to me about what they had been through, the only thing that I could form out of my mouth was Me Too. Like that was it. That is literally why it's called that. So we have to be mindful that when we think of vulnerability and psychological safety, which are strong components, I'm so conflicted because when you're younger, you don't have what you fear when you're younger, when you're 17, when you're 20. I guess I should ask in the chat, but I can't see the chat. What are you afraid of? You're afraid you're going to open up and somebody's going to tell. Somebody's going to go call. Somebody's going to post on Instagram. Somebody's going to screenshot your conversation. Like you're really afraid of those things happening. And I understand that. So don't let that be the only reason you don't speak up. There is a way for you to find a friend to actually call them, like on the phone. If you're worried about a screenshot, like we can actually use our phones to call people. It's like a revolutionary thing, but we can call people and we can just say, hey, I don't want this documented, but I just am having a hard day. I'd love to tell you something that happened to me and I need to talk through it. And set that boundary, have that place.
Here's another one. Do you have any advice or experience on trying to find a therapist that you're compatible with?
Oh, hi, Daniel. Daniel, this is the second one that he's been on with me today, too. So I feel like I've got a great
whole following. I mean, people swarm to you.
I love my people. They're all so beautiful. So, Daniel, this is another really good question. So what I do is in my research phase, I tried to identify where did I need the most support. So someone I love dearly has ADHD, and I encouraged her to look for therapists who focus on ADHD. I also have friends a friend who's lost both of her parents within the last year and a half. And she went to therapy for grief and really knew that was her entry point for therapy. So my first piece of advice is to understand where are you trying to go with your healing and knowing that there is no ending with healing. So when we think of grief, and when we think of grief is all of 2020 is grief, right? Death, jobs, plans, graduations. There's no ranking of pain or grief. Like, you can't do the comparative suffering. Pain is pain. So you need to identify where is it that you want your healing to begin and that charter to go on, so that you can start there. And then I think it's trusting your gut. I think it really is when you have that intake session with your therapist, because that's usually how most of them start, is that 30-minute discovery meeting. I've been through a handful of them, my friends. I can tell you that right now. You say, I don't know that they got me, or I don't know that that approach is going to work for me. And you really lean into that. And I mean, I really want to go all in and say that, like, I was really apprehensive of therapy, and I was apprehensive of medicine because I thought it made me weak. I thought it made me be seen as incapable of handling my life. Like, I really did. Like, these are things that we were taught growing up. Like, I really thought if anybody ever finds out that I went to therapy, what would they think of me? This is literally what I thought. So I have a lot of empathy for someone sitting here thinking, I would never want anyone to know that I went. And what I would tell you is, literally no one has to go that you went unless you tell them. So again, it's getting out of your head and into your body, out of your head into your body. And that is where you can start to free yourself. Like, imagine that feeling when we're so trapped in our own head. And my therapist said, and I knew I loved her, the line when she said this 30 seconds like into talking with me, she said, Ashley, you are an amazing storyteller, and you tell stories before they ever even happen. It's like, oh my God, she gets me. She gets me. And so I've stuck with her, and that's what I've needed this whole way through. So when you think of healing, there is no destination. There isn't. Healing is an everyday practice. It's not like when you're a survivor, like if you are done with your chemo treatment, theoretically that part of the journey is done, but you're now just beginning a new journey to continue healing. It is forward movement. It is not an ending point. You're constantly going to be healing.
That's an awesome place to end. So I told you we were going to go between 30 and 40 minutes. We're at 37 minutes right now. Hey, listen, I am grateful. You have, we've gotten to know each other over the last 3 or 4 years. It's been great. I'm so appreciative of you coming on. You come out, you are a great storyteller. And I know all these folks, that's why these folks follow you, because you are a great storyteller and you have something to say that's important. And man, if we just helped one person, it's worthwhile, right? So,
and I will say, Jason, I know you want to, sorry to cut you off, but I really just want to emphasize that, like, if anybody wants to send me a message and say, I don't know where to go, or can you help me out here? Like, I welcome that, because it's a scary feeling not knowing where to start. And again, I kind of vulnerably said, I didn't know where to start, so I didn't do anything. And I wish I would have started a lot long ago. I wish I would have started when I was terrified and 15 and making myself sick on a bathroom floor. I wish I would have started then. So this is my deeply vulnerable, open, honest plea for you to do the work you need to do and know that you're not alone.
That's great. If someone needed to contact you, what's the best way to holler at you?
I don't even know. I'm like on every platform. Honestly, I will say the best way would be to just go to ashley.sieb@gmail.com. That's my email, because I will be able to get a good one-to-one conversation with you there. Sometimes social media, if you're not following me, your message goes into another inbox and then I never see it. And then people think I'm a jerk for not replying, but like, I don't ever see it because we're not connected. So send me an email, ashley.sieb@gmail.com, and we will go from there.
We're going to end on that. That is no joke. Here soon, because she's going to be like, I'm like this.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Maybe I need to get on the momentum here. That's great. Hey, Ashley, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it. It's a special time to spend with you, and we're glad you're here. So, thanks for coming on with us and stay with us.
Thank you. I'll see you later.
Thanks again.
Bye.
All right, folks, another great interview. We'll be back at 1. Actually, I'm sorry. We'll be back at 2 o'clock with Dr. Wes Lackey, orthopedic surgeon. And so keep your comments going, and appreciate you being here.